Brainstorming, a comedy game design podcast by two guys who know nothing about comedy nor game design. I'm Trevor Scott, and with me as always is Ben Slinger.
Good evening.
Today we have another guest. His name is Emre Deniz. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Emre?
Hey, Ben and Trevor. So I'm the third person for today's show, and I also know nothing of game design as well, which, ironically, I am the lead game designer and producer at Opaque Media Group. I've been working there for over 3 years now on a range of projects, and most recently I've been working on a VR game called Earthlight, which some of you may have heard previously. We were featured quite heavily at the start of this year, including a production for NASA and Jet Propulsion Laboratory as well, just off the fringes of Los Angeles. And yeah, that's it. Great. Looking forward to this new year, basically, doing it all again.
Yeah, so what's your sort of production status at the moment?
On fire, basically. Which is, I think, a permanent production status for everyone until they ship it. We are currently exploring a range of different opportunities. It's been moving really rapidly for us. So we've got international partners like HTC and several others who have been quite interested in what we've been doing in virtual reality so far. Because we were also able to produce essentially the prototype of a second game called Genesis, which is a God game in VR.
Oh, nice.
And that was coming along really well, and we got to show it to an audience at PAX Australia this year. And in the VR area, it was received real well by people. And at the Acme Game Changer VR Festival, that was on during the Melbourne International Games Week. So it's going to be a busy year for us again, basically.
Very busy.
I love how much VR stuff there is going on in Melbourne. That's really exciting.
Oh, it's great, yeah.
As I was going to say, as fans of VR ourselves, considering we've sort of barely actually had a chance to experience it, it's more like potential fans, but I love the ideas behind it, and I love what's going on in that area, even if I haven't got to really use it much. But
it is a really exciting field to work in, I think, because of
I bet
the fields. It's a very new field, right? It's this whole new territory of doing things like trying to understand techniques of creating game immersion and flow, trying to understand user interactivity from scratch again, like what it means to have the agency of two hands present within your game world.
Yeah, I saw someone, I follow a few people on Twitter who are working in that area, and I saw someone post a little video the other day where to change the skin they were using, they had a mirror in front of them and some photos on the wall, and they'd pick a photo off the wall and just throw it at the mirror, and as it hit the mirror they'd see themselves change. Yeah, these great little interactivities. So yeah, it's really cool to see that sort of develop, and particularly because you're probably of a similar age to us, and we've sort of, the potential of VR has been around for a long time in our lives, going back to the 90s when
Virtual Boy.
The first wave of VR development happened and then kind of died off. So to see it come back with a vengeance is really cool.
I think that I was just young enough when Virtual Boy came out that I was more intimidated, I think, by Tron. And what was that movie? I think it was it the Lawnmower Man or something, like the movie?
Yeah, the Lawnmower Man, yep.
Yeah, the Lawnmower Man. That was my impression of virtual reality, that there was this digital world waiting for me where serial killers would haunt us. Obviously, social media beat that to the punch.
And now you're working towards making that a reality.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, right? I mean, I'm trying to bring on the apocalypse quite actively now as a VR developer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if you can't beat them.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll jump into the games, into the meat of the podcast. So for those who might be joining us on this episode, we generally start with a game called Click Pitch, which is where we all have a random word generator in front of us, and we count 3, 2, 1, click to get a new word, and we use that word to come up with a game design, which may be funny, may be interesting, might be something that we actually want to play and someone might want to make one day, but we shall see.
Okay, so here we go. 3, 2, 1, click. Fetus.
Rustling.
Corroborated. I feel as though that I drew the short straw on that. That's okay. Let's play. Let's do this.
Okay, so a rustling fetus. So I mean, a human fetus doesn't do much rustling, so maybe we're looking at something that's not human.
It definitely corroborates, though.
Well, maybe we're comparing. Maybe there's some sort of evolution thing where we're corroborating the evidence that we've seen, or like some sort of data that we have with what's happening to this actual rustling fetus.
So, I mean, this can be an audio game, right? Like where different rustling of fetuses are essentially data points.
Okay. So maybe, yeah. So it's a, like a VR audio game where you don't have any visuals and you're being attacked by fetuses. And the only way you can tell where they are is by their rustling. And
this is terrifying already.
Yeah.
So it's got to be in VR because, you can actually turn off the screen and literally they can't see anything. How is positional audio at the moment in headphones?
Oh, spatial audio in VR is actually pretty good because we map it pretty closely to what engines can offer us already. So audio volumes and things like that are pretty good. I mean, if you have a good set of headphones, for example, positional audio is quite a good method of building immersion in an environment.
So the positions of these fetuses are going to be perfectly rendered out there in the audioscape.
So I am now seeing something that is reminiscent of Silent Hill, but in VR. Like, okay, so if you're in a dark room, and you've got essentially your Vive controller's got a candle on it, and the movement of your hand dictates whether or not the candle's going to blow out, and there's little rustling fetuses of different sizes and rustling hovering around the room, circling you, and as you
like
try and navigate this environment
over the top of door frames and
everything, just crawling around like there's low poly fetuses that are rustling around this darkened cabin room.
So wait, do they have leaves or something? Because we probably need to figure out why they're rustling.
The room's full of dead cockroach husks.
Perfect.
So, are we doing this with room scale? So, therefore, it's with the HTC Vive, and as you're walking around, you're also making the crunching.
It, yeah.
Oh God, my partners at HTC are going to love me. I can see it now. Just the termination emails are going to come through tomorrow. We don't want anything to do with you ever again.
Oh, I don't know. I think they're going to want to push it into production right away. This is gold.
This is gold. This is horror game gold.
Bring some nice physics to really kick those cockroach husks around.
Oh God.
I'm just really wondering, is it kind of like, how in Super Hot where you as you're turning around and as you're moving, the rustling is actually going on, or is it always going on? So it's not.
No, I think it's got to be based on physical movement of you and the fetuses.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, let's explore the super hot idea a little bit further, but instead, maybe we can map it to the idea of where the light moves around. So, you may find that if you move the light around the room, the fetuses will move in accordance to how your light moves. The light?
Oh.
Yeah.
So there's almost a bit of like Johann Sebastian Joust in there, where you have to keep one hand sort of still while the rest of your body is moving.
Yeah, I like that. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
And make it... Oh, God.
So maybe this can actually be like a horror game. I think it's definitely a horror game, Trevor. Part of it. But they're just sort of the sound effects. But you've actually got to make it through this like dungeon sort of thing to try and get out.
Oh, so they're not even the main. They're not even the main sort of enemy in this. They're just kind of background, or sort of a game mechanic in themselves to support the real horror.
You know what would be terrifying as well? Just the idea that the candle is running out, like that's your time mechanic. And as the light dies, you can see that these rustling fetuses are getting closer and closer as the intensity of the light is scaled down according to the mesh size of whatever candle you're holding.
Yeah,
and
absolutely, their glowing eyes, like the candlelight reflecting in their eyes, just getting closer and closer.
I don't like this game already. I mean, this is not a game I would play.
No, but it's a game that someone would play.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the major horror games in VR are going to be already are pretty huge, I think, but there's so much potential there.
Oh, they're terrifying. I mean, the idea of having an escape room in room scale VR where considering your physicality and your movements. I mean, you chuck in a microphone and basically do the whole Alien Isolation Connect thing of every time you breathe, the candle flickers a little bit in your hand.
Oh, Jesus. That's amazing. Yes, we have to incorporate that into this game. That's it. If you accidentally
awesome.
exhale too loudly or too hard, then the candle can go out and the fetuses just pounce.
Just rustle, yeah. Just
that's it. The rustling just
rustling.
reaches a crescendo as they scuttle towards you.
Game over.
I don't like that. I just don't like that at all. Like, even imagining that in my head is just lots of nope, basically.
Yeah, I'm pretty freaked out right now.
That was pretty awesome. Let's see what we get next.
Let's see. Let's try to get something a bit brighter. Hey?
Yeah. 3, 2, 1, click.
Well, I got vibrant, so
Angst.
Oh, there you go. Vibrant angst. Okay.
Banquetting.
You
know where this is going. We all know where this is going.
Do we? Maybe I don't.
Oh, it's a teenage food fight.
So all that pent-up angst and bright colours.
So, like, before the game starts, you have to choose out of all the other people playing who your crush is, because, you know, being teenagers, there's this element of social awkwardness where should I throw? Well, it depends on what type of food you throw at her. If you throw a hot dog at her, is that going to be just too phallic? You know, is she going to take something from that you don't want to? You really don't want to express.
But if you throw like a cream pie at her, then that's just.
This is where everything just goes. I mean, it's like we went from husks of cockroaches in a darkened horror room to basically reliving all the wrong advice that we received as teenagers and how to court people of the gender that we're interested in.
Exactly.
It's like I can almost see like Fallout Boy playing in the background and all these droopy haired teenagers awkwardly throwing chicken bones and apple pies at each other.
Yeah, handfuls of peas and
like that. What was it? Hook. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All the different coloured goop that somehow is food in their universe. Well, you said Fallout Boy. I think though you have to enter your age when you start the game, and it just chooses the background music appropriately.
You've only got the bracket of choosing from 13 to 17, basically.
No, I'm thinking if you put in 55, then it's like playing music from the 70s and stuff.
Did the 70s have angst? I thought that they were pretty chipper, right off the back of the 60s.
True. I guess I was more just thinking of whatever you were listening to as a teenager when you would have experienced such angst. But
no, I really like that. Yeah.
As part of the game, in the game mechanics, I think rather than you choosing someone that you're attracted to, each player in this multiplayer game gets given a person that they've got to protect.
So it's kind of like that Assassin's Creed mode where there's like one person you have to assassinate, but in this it's protect your crush,
and they're in turn protecting someone else who's their crush.
Yeah,
and,
of course, because
so
nobody
like
when you're teenagers, nobody's actually like mutually into each other. This is how you generate angst, right?
You get points for hitting other people. You lose points for if your crush gets hit.
Okay, that's pretty awesome, actually.
And so
I like that mechanic.
I think it's got to be again VR. I think that's going to be like our main thing this week, because throwing mechanics in VR are just awesome.
Well, that's it. Well, and I'm thinking tools and as well, so you can pick up like sort of slingshot devices or
pick up a plate and frisbee across the room.
Ways to propel food as well.
Sling. I mean, I love that you said that. I mean, there is we've already looked for Genesis. We already had, because we can throw fireballs and houses and rocks in Genesis, right? So we have the idea of essentially like slinky arms, where we have these monkey arms, for example, that look like giant rubber monkey arms that kind of sway. So you can actually do that with a spoon, for example. You might be able to have like a mesh that will bend, so you can kind of do that flicking action.
Oh, yes, so you can kind of pull it back,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing I want to do is put a bowl down on a tray, move the tray slightly across the edge of a table, and just bring the fist down on it and just launches the bowl through the air.
Oh, that would work. Yeah, I mean, depending on what engine you're using, that's just going to work out of the box. I would say that, like, say Unity, just put a couple of rigid bodies into it. I mean, you could have like an apple, put a bowl on top of the not a bowl, like a tray on top of the apple, so that acts as a pivot point, and then just slam your fist down, and whatever's on top of the tray is going to go flying.
Very nice.
This is awesome. This is like way more implementation detail than we usually get into, so we know that this can be made.
Yeah, well, it can be. Absolutely, it can be. We can prototype that today if you really wanted to.
Oh, we do.
I'm thinking, you got to have a pretty rigid point system, because obviously you want to be losing points if you get hit with food, but you want to be gaining more points if you're hitting other people with food.
The type of food surely has to contribute to the amount of points.
Type of food, position on the body. So if you hit
Headshots.
someone with a banana cream pie in the face, then that's perfect comedy value, and that's going to maybe cause their VR screen to go all white, so they've got to actually use like touch controls around their face to actually wipe it off.
Windscreen wipers.
Yeah.
The problem is VR can't tell if your mouth's open, because I was going to say if you catch the food in your mouth, then you either get points or get some sort of power up or something.
That would be amazing if we could do facial tracking. I mean, we already have solutions in things like using Connect for faceware. There's a plugin for Opaque right there. That's our plugin, and that could detect whether or not your mouth is open, for example.
I guess that's all you need. You could almost even do it just as if your face is pointing in the right direction for the incoming food or something, because we've already got that built in.
Unless you can just do it by button, maybe. Like if you can utilize one of the buttons on a controller, so that if you're facing a piece of food being thrown at you, you hit the button. The button means that your mouth is open. You eat the food, you get a power up. So I don't know. The game spawns a velociraptor that jumps on a table and eats food.
I'm just super amused by the idea of watching all the other avatars in this world with their mouths just like flopping open and closed as they press the button.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I mean, the idea that, because you can really push the stylization so that you'd have these almost Sesame Street-esque giant flapping heads trying to eat like hungry hippos in VR, launching food at each other, who've managed to enter into a giant love triangle with each other whilst everyone's audio is playing in the background, or whatever music they were interested to, because we got a licensing deal with Spotify and the money's just coming in.
Oh my god.
I mean, could you imagine being on one side of the room, you flip a table up, you're hiding behind it, you're throwing stuff over the top, you pick up a tray off the ground and you're like covering your face as you're throwing stuff from underneath it. It's like, I reckon this would actually be a really fun game. Maybe you get extra points for blocking things with the tray, but you lose points for taking someone's head off with the tray.
Yeah, so you can't do that.
That's it. If you hit them with anything other than food, like that's a penalty.
You just go to jail. I mean, it's just like, hey,
yeah, that's assault.
You've committed a felony. You get to go to jail now.
And that's the next stage, because then it's a jail food fight. And there are like shivs and things flying around.
God.
It's much higher difficulty level.
So I'm just wondering, do you have like a thing where the teacher comes in and you've got to try and all stop and sit back down at the desk, and it's like sit as if nothing happens?
You don't make eye contact with the teacher.
Yeah. If you make eye contact, he comes over and he goes, "Yep, you're the one. You're the instigator, and you're out of the game."
I love it. I mean, you can do a raycast out of the front of each player's screen, so it's almost like this whole Slenderman effect of, if you look at the teacher will immediately orient towards you and face you and move towards you, and you're out.
Yeah. So it's not even necessary. Well, presumably the teacher would have to be looking at you to make it fair. So you can kind of, if they start turning their head towards you, you can look away.
I think we should make it so that, what was it? Was it the Enderman in Minecraft? The little enemy that if you hit with a cursor, just orient just the head, so you can have their head flip backwards and face you, basically.
Oh, no. Kind of like what's it called, The Exorcist? His head just spins around.
Or even better, like, how teachers will sort of say to kids that they've got eyes in the back of their head. It's just the eyes; they just rotate around the head.
Oh god, that's a good one. And then we kick up like the emission on the eyes, so they start to glow with intensity of burning hatred for you and what you've committed. And then
okay, so therefore it should be a robot principal?
No.
No. Let's go with uncanny valley effect. Let's go with a human being.
This is just what principals. This is when you become a school principal, like, you gain certain powers.
So in other words, you really want that technology from like LA Noire or maybe even Rogue One, and just
realistic as possible.
And then just go full Assassin's Creed bug onto it, and have the eyes like just rotate and pop around and look at you.
That one's actually one of my favorite games that we've actually talked about. So
just ship it, guys. We're done here. Just ship it.
That's great. No, we don't ship games on this podcast. It's only the ideas. It's up to you guys.
Mainly because we don't actually have a VR kit to actually develop with,
or skills.
Okay, we'll click again. 3, 2, 1.
Predicament.
Heirloom.
Outgrown.
Okay.
Wow, this is a good one. This is a real good one.
This has got some sort of there's sort of backstory ideas like popping into my head around how you can outgrow an heirloom and what sort of predicament that could put you into. So let's think of an heirloom that you can outgrow for one.
A ventriloquist dummy that you get scared of. Therefore, you've outgrown it.
Come on, let's shift away from horror. This is
okay.
I can see some real like emotional gaming here. Like, you know, this is your grandmother's wedding dress or something.
Hey, that's not bad actually. Yeah.
I'm not sure where the gameplay comes in yet, but we'll figure something.
I think that exploring the narrative element of entering a gameplay environment of a deceased family member is something that could be quite powerful in virtual reality. I think that that is something where, you know, we swing on the complete other direction. Like, we've explored horror, we've explored comedy. This is about exploring the idea of communicating essentially empathic
loss
play.
And yeah, I mean, like, obviously the first thing I jumped to is Gone Home, which now that I think of it, would have been perfect in VR. Like, you're just picking things up and looking at them and wandering around this environment, which is awesome. So yeah, I'm sort of getting that very much that vibe from it. I like that idea of you sort of show up this place of a deceased relative and finding things out about their lives and bring in some personal heirloom element.
It's a close, it's a thing that we did. So in 2015 and 14, Opaque Media Group was working on something called the Virtual Dementia Experience, which was an empathic learning tool in virtual reality and augmented reality that essentially walked you through an environment, but with mimicking the effects of what it's like to live with dementia.
So things would sort of change around you.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
And like, you know, you'd enter a room and then you'd exit through the same door, but then the expected transition would be different. So you might exit, like, you might go through a corridor, there's a bathroom, you exit the bathroom, but then you're in the living room or something in your hand, like you'd pick up a toothbrush. And now this is the horrifying part about it, is the fact that it's actually mapped to anecdotal case studies when we're working with academics. So the idea is that you could pick up a toothbrush and then in your hand, the toothbrush would transform into a shaving razor, which is something that had happened to someone previously. Or the cold and hot switches on a shower would change. So you kept, every time you tried to pick, and for example, I did the textures on the burnt hand.
Oh god.
And like, this is back when I was a senior texture artist at Opaque, and I posted a photo of that texture on Facebook, and I had messages from people saying, you know, hey, are you alright? Did you burn yourself? Like, not my hand. It's the hand of the game. But thanks for that.
Yeah. It's almost pretty much a compliment, even though it's sort of in a very dark way. But
I'll take compliments wherever I can find them. Because I'm a horrible narcissist. But the idea is that these three words that we've got here, I think they could create a really powerful storytelling environment where you are exploring this environment. But the idea of outgrown, for example, what if you're exploring your own space that you had as a child, for example?
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. And then you find an heirloom that you thought that you lost a long time ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm wondering even if, because sort of bringing in the idea of things changing and stuff, there's almost an overlay of memory or switching back and forth between memory and present day. You could even change your perspective in VR.
Yeah, change height and all that sort of stuff. So
absolutely.
As you're walking down a corridor, maybe just after you've picked up something, the corridor starts growing, or rather you start shrinking as you're walking down, and that's your transition into the memory. Yeah,
and as you enter the next room, sort of maybe like some sort of memory plays to further the narrative a bit, but you're experiencing it as a child.
I can tell you guys now that we've done prototyping in changing scale at runtime in VR, so that's definitely something that's feasible. It works.
Okay, it's not too like nausea-inducing.
It can be if it's a rapid change, right? So if you shoot someone up or scale them down really quickly, you are definitely going to induce simulation sickness.
Well, I was going to say, even if you keyed it to their movement through the space.
Perfect, absolutely. Yeah, player initialized scaling up and down is what we found originally was the key to that. So in terms of a gameplay mechanic, this is definitely an element that you could comfortably explore within the game, essentially.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. So, well, all right, shall we explore this a little bit more, or do you think we've sort of wrung everything out of it we can? I like the general idea. We haven't gone into any specifics, but I like this space of sort of coming back to childhood home after, I guess, some sort of event, perhaps, like you haven't been here in a while, obviously.
I think so.
It could maybe be that your parents have passed away and you're coming back to your childhood home and going through their stuff, and that's why you're triggering the memories and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and if you're holding stuff, you have like, little kids running around and disappear in like the living room and
yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
that could be some really
fun stuff with that.
One of the best gameplay experiences I had in a little while was playing Dear Esther and also Gone Home. Just walking around picking stuff up, and when Ben, you mentioned it before, I was thinking that exact same thing about Gone Home.
Environmental storytelling sort of stuff.
But to take it that extra step further with the memories and actually having some sort of interaction with people where maybe your choices within the game changes like some of the conversation trees within the memory.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just thinking, actually, because, Gone Home, and I haven't actually played all the way through Dear Esther, but very solitary experiences. I wonder if you could bring in sort of a companion mechanic in some way to help move the narrative along and explain these things. And, obviously you have this memory happen, and then they're like, hey, what happened? Where'd you just go? Like, and then there can almost be some conversation there too.
Hey, that works. I mean, maybe a progression arc is essentially key objects within this space will play essentially like a non-player character, and it could be anything. It could just be like a golden retriever. A dog or something just in that environment that pops up every time you hit this key object. And I'd be really fascinated to see how you could explore the idea of your interaction mapping to having permanent effects on the environment. For example, maybe if you pick something up with one hand, the palette of that changes, or the tone. So maybe a photograph you pick up with your left hand, everyone starts smiling, and then you hold it with your right hand and everyone's sad, becomes black and white, and how your interactions start to color the memories of that environment, essentially.
That's really cool. Yeah, well, I like that idea. Even just to sort of indicate important objects in the environment that have either, that maybe have memories associated with them, that, you pick them up and, some sort of sepia or desaturation effect sort of flows out from your hand into the object to sort of show you that there's some significance there to the past or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, my brain goes straight to the technical stuff for this. Like, it's like, oh yeah, that's fine. We'll just use substance plugin in UE4. We'll just, we can change stuff in runtime. It's fine. I mean, we'll change textures in runtime. We can swap textures in and out, or we can desaturate them in runtime. That's cool.
That's it. I don't know the full on technical details, but I've seen this stuff. I know it can be done.
Like, trust me, programmers are magicians. They can sort this out.
Oh yeah. I'm a programmer by trade, just not a game programmer. So I know how to get into this stuff.
Awesome.
Our early tagline in this was anyway, just let the developers sort it out. We come up with the ideas, they've just got to implement it.
Exactly.
This podcast is a game student's dream, basically. That's what they do. They just come up with ideas all day, and then they just, someone else is going to fix it. They're going to come up with the production.
Totally.
Pretty much.
Well, it's everyone out there who wants to be a game designer or involved in the game industry without having to actually learn any skills. So.
Oh yeah.
We're just taking it to the next level and making it real.
So the idea of what I do in my work, for example, as a game designer, is that this would be like the most fun thing that you would do in a day, because 99% of everything else is about mechanic design. So it's like,
oh, absolutely.
What's the formula for picking an object up? So player picks up X object essentially flags a game system that says, I've been picked up. Now let's activate the substance plugin, because depending on which controllers pick me up, I'm gonna change my my textures here.
Yeah,
and you gotta essentially.
That's fun on a different level, but not like just coming up with ideas and blue skying it is where a lot of the fun comes from. So.
That's the fun, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the fun, and the job is basically everything that comes after that, which is
making it happen.
Making it happen, essentially, and prototyping it and iterating on it and failing as many times as you can. Because we don't know, right? For example, this idea might be like the worst idea that anyone ever made. Like, I'll get shunned out of the VR industry because I came up with this idea, but I don't know yet.
But that's
like,
it.
But
we don't care. We don't care at this point. Sounds like fun. Sounds cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's funny. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we should move on and hit the button again.
Yep.
Let's hit this button. Yep.
3, 2, 1, click. Jaw.
Okay, I got keg.
I got displeased. This is definitely parents coming home to find that their child threw a party, isn't it?
Oh, it's a cleaning up simulator in VR. This is the thing. Like, from my point of view, and probably yours as well, because it's still such early days, but like, everything seems fun in VR. Even cleaning up in VR.
Oh, it's super
Seems
fun.
like it would be a good time.
That's the problem that I have with virtual reality, is the fact that we try and find ways, like, for example, and I digress a little bit, but in Genesis, for example, you have the ability to pick up trees and then walk over and deposit them directly into construction sites where the villagers are supposed to go chop down trees themselves. I originally designed that with the intent that you as a player would get bored of doing that. And it turns out that people don't. They like doing it.
I can picture that, just yanking out the trees, throwing them into the construction yard, get a good construction line going. Yeah.
I mean, virtual reality, I think, is essentially the key to making manual labor become this fun, fascinating, engaging thing. I'm surprised that like evil corporations aren't throwing absolutely stupid amounts of money to make really mundane things feel rewarding.
They're probably on it. They're probably way ahead of us. Or maybe we just gave them the idea. I don't know. This is the beginning of the end, this podcast.
So basically, they're going to blame you both. So Ben and Trevor were the instigators of the downfall of the anti-revolution that happened, the complete subjugation of the human soul.
That's it. Sorry.
That's okay. We'll take that as long as we get. As long as, you know, we get more listeners listening in. In the meantime.
It'll be forced at that point.
I'm pretty sure we've said on a previous episode HTC Vive in every living room, so that would actually achieve that. So it's just what we wanted.
I'm pretty sure that there's a magic number of times that we can mention people like HTC Vive before someone from them basically says, we should promote this show.
I think so. I mean, that's basically been our goal from the beginning.
Let's get back on track.
Keg Jaw Displeased. It's the parents coming in. We've thrown a huge party.
Where does the jaw come into it, though?
You can only clean with your mouth.
You can only clean with your mouth. Oh
no, you're a python. You're a python that threw a giant party, and your parents will come home.
Yes. So, like, you can only fit a certain amount of large objects in your body that you have to unhinge your jaw.
Basically.
Yeah.
And how does that work in VR, though?
Say that you're not the python. The python is what you control as like this slithering ragdoll kind of like rope simulation thing.
Yes.
And the parents
you just throw things at it.
No. So I've seen again on Twitter some people doing some really interesting stuff with basically puppetry where your main character is not you in first person. It's whatever's it's attached to your controller. It's controlled by your hand basically as a puppet.
Yeah, that could work. That or the fact that maybe you have to jangle like little mice in front of the python, and the python will swallow up the garbage as it's trying to hit the mice, and you got to keep moving your hand around.
Well, I think like this is reminding me very strongly of Snake. So like every time you pick something up, does it just get a little bit longer, and you have to deal with an even more tangled rope simulation in this 3D world?
Yeah, and you got to make sure it doesn't kill itself, because then the parents will be more upset because it's dead.
Because it's their pet python.
Well, it's a dead child. Yeah, they come home and the child's dead. The house.
Wait, it doesn't kill the child. Yeah, okay. I thought you meant kill the python.
Oh my god. Okay, nailed it. That was great. You guys have got it. You guys have nailed it. Is the fact that you're controlling the pet python. The child has thrown a party and now is asleep, and you're trying to clean the mess around it before the parents get home. And you make it with like real watercolory, upbeat, like almost like a papercraft kind of Gone Home-esque type of art direction. Except what happens if the python actually eats the child? In which case you have a really well-made physics simulation of a child being eaten by a giant python.
Oh god, yeah. And when it's done, like you can just see the outline of it in the python's skin, like poking out of it,
And the mice in your hand keep moving.
And I'm thinking not just one child, like this is a bunch of drunk teenagers
just sleeping
around. Throwing this party, and they're just sort of draped across the furniture, and you have to clean up all the cups, the bottles, the broken chandelier as a python, because apparently this python is just really into making sure this kid doesn't get in trouble.
So maybe I kind of want to go back to Emre's idea about not controlling the python, and maybe you've got to try and wrangle the python away from eating the kids, because that's the only thing it really wants to do, and so that's another difficulty spike.
Oh, I like it because okay, so now we're starting to cook in the kitchen basically. What I'm seeing here is you've got mice scurrying around the teenagers on the floor because the house is a mess. They've been throwing a 3-day bender. Everyone just had a crash.
Yep.
The python will always default to the nearest possible sleeping teenager unless you can hold a mouse above its head, which means that with one hand you're trying to catch these mice and trying to bring it to the python, and the python, whenever it loses interest, will then default back to trying to eat a teenager again.
Yes. And you're also trying to clean up the place.
Yeah, and as you start cleaning the house, the mice start to spawn less and less because there's less of a mess.
Oh, yeah, because they're attracted to all the mess. Well, and also there are just drugs scattered about because this was a real bender, and if the python eats the drugs, then it like changes its behavior in some way.
I love it. Like, kids have just come back from Revolver. It's been 3 days. They've been going hard at it. They've got, stuff flying everywhere. Python's moving around. You're trying to get the python, don't eat the cocaine. Just go for the MDMA because you'll just be a bit more mellow. Give me 30 seconds of breathing room.
Yeah.
I don't know how pythons work with drugs, but this game can kind of, make a couple of creative licenses. But I'm pretty sure if the python hits something like methamphetamine, we're going to have a real problem on our hands.
You do realize that you've just got the game banned in Australia, though.
Oh, without doubt. I'm probably going to get deported over that, but that's fine.
And also, just for an extra challenge for the developers, you have to code it in Python.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to love that, right? Because they're going to need, this is a great meta game that we've developed here because God knows they're going to need a lot of drugs to get over that.
To really put together a decent VR engine in Python.
I would love to just ask one of our senior programmers if that's possible, but I'll have to be wearing headgear when I do that.
Yeah. Send him the episode, and when he gets to, approximately 40 minutes in or whatever we are, just watch how red his face gets.
Or how fast he throws his headphones across the room or something like that.
Basically, yeah. I'll have to ask one of our senior programmers. I'll ask her to see whether or not it's doable with as a serious thing, and then maybe try and convince them that that's my next project that I'm going to pitch. Let's do a VR engine in Python. I don't even know what that entails. All I know is it's not feasible. But
definitely have a hidden recorder, and we'll put it out as a bonus episode.
Definitely, bonus episode. Emre Deniz becomes unemployed and is assaulted by a coworker.
Yes.
That's how you'll get more followers, definitely.
Definitely.
Okay, I think it's time to move into the eye of the storm.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Catch us on Twitter. We're at Lamestorming.
You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/lamestorming.
You can email us, podcast@lamestorming.com.
Search for Lamestorming on iTunes. That's 2 words. And you can rate, review, and subscribe to us there.
We've got a website, lamestorming.com.
I would like to thank Kuridas, of which we are both members, for the track that we use in the opening and closing credits and over the top of Eye of the Storm, Mount Defiance.
I'd like to plug Zencastr, ZENCASTR. They've provided us with our recording capabilities for our guest today, so thank you very much.
We'd like to plug our other podcast, Two Sweary Dads. You can find that at twoswearydads.com, and that's a parenting podcast. Yeah, go check it out.
So, Emery, is there anything you'd like to plug?
You can always check out Opaque Media Group's work at www.opaque.media, as well as check out our games, which is Genesis God Game on Twitter, and you can check out Earthlight at www.earthlightvr.com, where you can sign up for the mailing list and keep up to date with all the news and cool stuff that we're cooking up in Opaque Media Group.
Done. All right, well, let's do one more click pitch.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, click.
Hearsay.
Erosion.
Penance.
Oh, God, that's an interesting combination.
We have so many directions that we can go with this.
I'm trying to figure out how you work Erosion into the other two, which are clearly very sort of social dynamics.
So is it a game that you've got to actually try and talk a climate change denier into actually... into actually believing in what is literally happening to the world, or
I really like that
idea. How you can make a game out of that?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that your hardware suppliers will be pretty happy because the amount of times that I would slam the headset down and walk away and break it, basically, out of frustration. Fine, if you want to cook yourself to death, that's whatever. I hate this game, and I'll buy a new VR kit.
So it's basically twitter.com.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that anything to do with that, essentially, the penance angle is one that's interesting. You could, just for argument's sake, let's go with that. Let's go with the climate denier. Yeah, in VR, you're throwing, I don't know, facts on a table at someone who's denying climate change.
Yeah. Okay.
And the penance being that
blocking
the world.
them very effectively.
Yeah, like Neo from The Matrix
Yeah.
has just achieved the one status, and you are no longer able to throw anything, and the world is getting hotter, and there's a firestorm outside.
And then it just becomes a first-person shooter, right? So we can just get all our frustrations out.
Oh, that or like a VR beat-em-up game.
Oh, yeah.
Boxing simulator.
Boxing simulator, exactly.
So wait, is the erosion coming from when you finally like erode down their defenses and convince them that anthropomorphic climate change is a real thing and that 99% of scientists aren't in a huge conspiracy?
I think that just ethically speaking, designing a game like that and having to write all the denial stuff would make me go insane. I don't think I would like. I would have to just go to Twitter and just say, I think climate change is real, and then just copy and paste every response that I get from that into canned responses.
You could write a bot and just feed the responses directly into the game data.
I would love to write a number of bots actually. That would just disagree with people and just see how far that goes before they realize it's a bot. That's a different game.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. Well, I was going to say you could almost make this game where there's a real-time bot that is out there on Twitter that's feeding the responses into your game, because you'd probably get responses quickly enough from all the terrible people out there to make that work.
The moment that the internet becomes aware of that, like we're living in the age of Bodie McBoatface, you're going to very quickly change the climate science argument on the internet into one of just constantly sending pictures of penises with the tagline of climate change, just to see if they can break your game. And very quickly the world
could be interesting though.
Well, you would definitely ensure that our species will cook itself to death, because all discourse will then be dominated by this desire of people on Twitter to essentially use the hashtag for sending phallic pictures to each other.
Dick pics to your bot, yeah.
Yeah, with the intention of just the pure intention of just killing this game.
I'm not sure we'd be in a much worse situation than we are now, but
that could be Penance. Like that could be the meta game, like the meta narrative of this game, being that the penance of the human race is the fact that we've derailed climate change.
Perfect. Yes. Oh my god, that wraps that up really nicely. I think ship that as well. We're shipping titles all night tonight. Oh god, definitely.
We are open for business.
All right. Well, I think let's move into our final segment. And for those who have listened to any episodes where we've had guests on before, this is where we take the name of a game, Emre, that you are working on.
Yep.
And come up with alternate versions of that game that could exist just based on the name. So in this case, I guess we'll take Earthlight, since that's sort of your prime game, I think, that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in a pinch, we can also choose Genesis, which opens up a very religious angle there.
That's fairly broad. But I think let's see what we can do with Earthlight. So, we have two elements here. We have Earth, we have Light.
Yep.
Give me game mechanics.
All right, let's boogie, right? We've got an Earth, and we've got this idea of light essentially striking the Earth. So obviously, a part of us, our brains immediately go to the idea of photosynthesis and game mechanics that are derived from the presence or absence of vegetation on a Earth-like surface. My mind almost flies back to there was this really cool spin-off of Animorphs books where it taught. I am going way into a rabbit hole here, so buckle up, everybody.
Let's do it.
We're going for a ride.
Animorphs.
Awesome. Animorphs had this one book that talked about, as a form of entertainment, this alien race essentially was using a digital simulation of raising life from single-cell organisms to civilizations. So they're looking into that. So we're going to go into a little bit of spore territory here. The idea that...
Dangerous ground, but we can tread it carefully.
Thankfully, we don't have the marketing team from Maxis that are around to distill the game and to crush our hopes and dreams. We've only got theory here, not market dynamics. The idea would be that what happens if you had the idea of being able to, in virtual reality, adjust the planetary positions in a solar system to influence the habitation zone of a planet to increase or decrease vegetation, ice, or atmospheric conditions and things like that. And then look at things such as essentially shadows and lights, planets that block each other, for example, in orbit, or asteroids that can cause density and block out light. Obviously, it's oversimplifying and taking huge liberties in terms of astrophysics, but you could derive some mechanics.
Simulating entire solar systems and the life that is growing they're in?
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that, you're obviously oversimplifying the idea of light like by a huge margin from what we've been told. There's a great little plug in there. We actually did speak to astronauts who've been up on EVA in low Earth orbit, and one of the striking things that they said to me was, so Tom Marshburn, for example, in a conversation that I had with him, said that the dark side of the Earth is actually really bright, and when you look at the stars, like there's so much light emanating from the stars themselves. So maybe let's flip that around for a second, right? The idea being that what happens if the vegetation you're dealing with on this planet grows in the absence of light? So you have to find creative ways to block light hitting this planet.
Yeah, okay. So the light is more damaging than positive in this situation to their growth, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to fire asteroids off to put them into the right orbit.
Yep.
Over a long enough time frame. Like, this is the thing, like an asteroid, well, I guess an asteroid maybe becomes a moon if you're putting it in orbit around a planet, but in the right orbit that it's blocking enough of the light enough of the time to actually allow these organisms to grow and evolve.
Yeah, without striking other asteroids that are in orbit. So you have this delicate balance of constantly shifting asteroids in orbbit, trying to create a blanket of areas where light's not hitting just long enough for vegetation to establish itself.
Yeah, I can picture sort of, the time-lapse visuals of how that works and the vegetation growing on the planet. It's really cool.
So it's almost as if the radiation from that sun is actually harmful to the planet, so you can actually have maybe little Geiger counter for an area to sort of show how much radiation
you could do it visually
within the area,
like just this sort of the luminosity almost, or just the way that it's rendered. You could really do something cool with that.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, even on the back of that, like a second idea that could pop out from this, essentially like in a completely different direction, is the idea of solar energy, like Earth light being light that's striking the Earth, and exploring concepts of receiving light to power something, for example. And that could just be, I don't know, like maybe you're a little rover that's come back to Earth after some sort of calamity, and it's a hugely like barren atmosphere.
Sort of a Wall-E situation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly Wall-E, right? And solar energy is your only way of actually getting energy.
Yeah. That could be a really cool challenge to sort of be navigating this barren environment and sort of having to, even chase the sun, right? Like, it could even be that you have to be moving quickly enough through these obstacles, and you're not particularly graceful as a little rover, but it could even be that I guess you probably can't move quite quickly enough. I guess it depends on the size of the planet and the orbit, but stay within the sunlight. That night comes and bad things happen, or something like that.
I think that you hit a great direction here by that.
Yeah.
And this is a fascinating thing, right? Like, why don't we explore the idea of Earthlight being a survival crafting game, but you can never actually stay in one spot for too long, and you have to constantly either chase or stay ahead of dusk and night.
Yeah.
So you have to constantly keep moving this environment that's procedurally generated, staying in the light.
Otherwise, you hear the rustling of fetuses.
We're back to the start, guys. We've come back to the start.
I love that though, because so many survival games, and that's obviously been quite a genre that's had a lot of different entries over the past few years, but they often revolve around you sort of building up your base and building up your resources in one particular area and building a home base. But yeah, if you have to constantly keep moving, like, that adds a whole other challenge.
Yeah, I'm wondering why no one's ever explored this concept. The idea being that why don't we break down the core mechanics of the tropes of survival games? Being that, I mean, let's just pitch it real quick. Like, the idea being that you have a bus, like a school bus. It's got giant solar panels, Oregon Trail kind of thing. Of you have to constantly keep driving down this highway that's procedurally generated, and you can never fall behind too much into dusk and night. Once you're at night, you're basically like, Dawn of the Dead. Zombies appear out of nowhere and smash into your bus and eat everybody, and you're dead.
There's just a wave of them, but they have to stay in the absence of the sunlight.
My only problem with this is land is only so big. You'll eventually get to an ocean or something impassable, and then it's like,
really
shit,
quickly.
But maybe the game actually, like, it reminds me of The Road. Both the book and the movie. The idea being that this constant chasing down of this coast, essentially. Once they hit the coast, they start moving down the coast. But if we explore the idea of essentially real-time movement through a space with procedural generation, and procedural is always this thing where it's not a magic bullet, it will have huge issues, and it's this crazy thing. But the idea being that procedural generation can work in a game like this because you can't go back. to where you've already progressed through. So there's no
Yeah,
idea.
absolutely.
You have to keep going forward, which means that we deload essentially the things that we've generated previously. So you're essentially dealing in cells of generation. So once you go from one cell to the next cell, you wipe out the cell previously, and you can keep doing this idea of just you keep moving forward. And if you don't even want to have a resolution to this, you could even have the idea that Earthlight, survival game is about how far did you get before you ran out of food, before you fell behind.
Yeah, there's a roguelike kind of aspect to it.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I would play that game, honestly. Like,
Yeah,
it seems like it's one of those things where you put it into VR, for instance, and let's just for the idea of being cheap about it, let's just say you do the teleportation mechanics and you end up like approaching farmsteads, for example, and you know that you've only got like the luxury of 20 minutes to pick up as much food and wood and this and that, replace your tire, board up the windows a little bit more, get back in the bus and keep driving forward before you actually fall behind. And then
and the potential of perhaps any place that might have been shielded from the sunlight could hold the horrors that are following you along.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, you come to like an underpass.
There's this real tension both of the time constantly marching on, but there are resources in this farmhouse or whatever, but they could
be there.
Yeah.
And not just that, like the idea. I mean, I love it. I totally love it.
But if you do manage to sort of clear it out, maybe you can barricade yourself in there for the night, and survive, a wave of attack to be able to then wake up the next morning and
you
then
could have have some sort of mechanic around giving yourself that breathing room of being able to find shelter for the night. But I think it'd have to be fairly challenging,
Yeah, it'd be like, have you ever played? It was the DayZ.
Oh
yes, of course.
So during the day, the zombies were pretty docile and all that sort of stuff. But the second it hit night, you were totally fucked, basically.
Yeah, so that's not bad actually. Like if you do find a place that you think you can maybe survive the night, like that's the challenge. But it's not going to be it's not going to be a piece of cake. Like it's going to be a hard slog through. But at the end of it, it means you get to start moving on in the morning of that day, right? So the faster you can move, the more time you're going to have before dusk catches up with you again.
That could work as a good reset mechanic. I would say that you can commit to two different directions. One being that, like, if you make this about an endless runner meets a survival game, there is that overt pressure constantly as a mechanic where you can explore this like the idea that you can never stop. You can never feel safe. You never feel comfortable. And then it means that every time you meet an obstacle, and the idea being that the danger exists at the absence of light, introduces a number of elements that become really, really engaging for me, even if I was a gamer, to experience these things. Like, say you come to a freeway and you have a freeway that's an underpass and a freeway with an overpass with blocked cars. What's the value proposition you make as a player with a game economy? You might have lights, like UV lights on top of your bus, and you know that if I'm going to go through the underpass, I absolutely have to turn my lights on, and it means I'm going to drain my batteries. If I don't make it to the other side of whatever this underpass is, I'm gonna die in this place. Like my game comes to an end because the lights will go off, they'll break in, and I'll die. And even if I get to the other side, will I have enough battery time left over to do the things that I need to do in the game? Like maybe my radio turns off, my headlights turn off, I have like trickling battery, and I need that sunlight time to get me charged back up, basically.
Fuck yes, I love it. That's awesome.
This is a good game. I would be really happy if someone made this game.
Oh man, it tends to happen with at least one of the ideas on each episode, so that's really cool. I actually really like that.
I think if there's any indie devs that are going to be be this podcast, they need to farm the hell out of all the previous episodes.
Definitely,
because even with like a game jam,
we need to put up a nice license that just says you're free to use them, because we want to play these games, man. Like it's like, go ahead, do it, take them.
Ask for a percentage, like seriously. I mean, it's one of those things. I think that it would be but it would be quickly able to prototype some of these things. Very recently, I tweeted out a bunch of like game design experiments using light, for example, as a game mechanic, and they struck really well. With, I think one of them was like RT'd a couple of like hundreds of times because of this idea that the absence and the presence of light were really profound in a scene that just used like primitive shapes, basically. Like you only see when there's light, so that the game is actually playable in the presence of light, and that was just made by a metro train that was going past this platform, basically. So I think that this bus thing,
that's awesome. That's some really cool stuff you could do with that idea. I love it.
Yeah, I'm really happy with that one, actually.
All right, Pro, priorities shifted from Earthlight. This is the game now, guys.
I'm going back in the office tomorrow. I'm saying, everyone stop what you're doing. We have it. We have the next game.
So we'll call it Earthlight. We'll just get rid of everything. It doesn't matter that NASA was interested in us.
Yeah,
let's go choose this unproven zombie apocalypse thing.
I can't wait for everyone's face when I get back in the office tomorrow and to tell them that everything is getting cancelled and we are going to make a new, better game for Earthlight.
Happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
Or you could just go, you know what? I've come up with a sequel to Earthlight, Earthlight 2. And
it's just complete. You crash land, the International Space Station falls to Earth.
I'm sure that our the people that we collaborate with at NASA are going to absolutely love the VR depiction of the International Space Station crashing to Earth.
Definitely.
I can't wait to see their faces.
Definitely not.
All right. Well, yeah, I think that we might finish it on that note of the International Space Station crashing to Earth and living in a post-apocalyptic world of zombies where you need to stay ahead of the night.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone makes that game, make sure you credit me, Ben, and Trevor because
yeah, definitely.
That's a good idea right there.
Copyright lamestorming.
Okay, so that's all we have time for today on Lamestorming.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming on, Emre. That was awesome. I think we came up with some really cool and funny and horrific ideas.
Yeah, I'm really glad. I mean, I'm going to have nightmares about at least one of those games. So that was a really rewarding experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's our goal in each episode. So
sorry for bringing it back up at the end. Emre, do you want to shout out your plugs again?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can check out Earthlight at www.earthlightvr.com, where you can sign up to our mailing list and stay up to date with all the news that are coming out. We have exciting stuff coming out in 2017 about both Earthlight and Genesis' development. You can also keep up to date with Opaque's news and game stuff at www.opaque.media, and you can also stay up to date with cool stuff that I'm up to in both my independent game development as one of 2 people in Chalk and Rain and one of 3 people in Philosophy of 10 through Twitter, which is Emre Deniz. So it's at Emre_C_Deniz at Twitter.
So Emre, shall we start development?
I think that for every single one of those games, including the stuff that I'm working on professionally, we shouldn't start development. First game, I have absolutely no idea how you're going to have so many moving fetuses in an environment and keep it performant in VR. Dead. Second game, I'm not sure how you're going to be able to have so many physics bodies like fruit and food and that moving around in multiplayer and sync that over network. Dead. Third game, I have no idea how you're going to be able to build a universal narrative attachment with diverse backgrounds of players and make it meaningful for them. Dead. Fourth game was the Python game. Okay, so we have depiction of drugs and teenagers being murdered by pythons. Chances are you're going to end up hitting your release window at the same time as some horrific story coming out of some country where some kids were murdered. Probably by a python, PR nightmare, no publisher wants to touch it, dead. And the bus game, I'm pretty sure that you're going to get beaten to the punch by some modder who's going to mod that into Minecraft, dead. Let's go with Earthlight, making a space game depicting the most complex thing that human beings have tried to do, which is human spaceflight in virtual reality, which is an emerging platform on an emergent game engine, really difficult, dead.
Okay, they're all dead.
Yes, beautiful. Everything's dead now. I've actually managed to strip away my entire games career in one sweeping hit.